Meeting to order. Village of Silverton acknowledges the Indigenous peoples on whose traditional territories we stand. Can I get somebody to move the adoption of the agenda? Councillor Denbach, seconded by Councillor Main. All in favor? Carried. And we have a couple adoption of minutes from the May 12th meeting and the May 4th meeting. Can I get somebody to adopt? Councillor Main, seconded by Councillor Broughton. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have one delegation, and we have Dan from the RDCK Emergency Program. Welcome, Dan, and I will turn it right over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Gordon. Just checking out that you guys can hear me.
Yeah, hearing you great.
I will attempt to share my screen. Oh, sharing is not turned on. Let's see if that'll work. Okay, here we go. So in theory, you should be looking at a title slide. Is that the case? Oh, can you still hear me?
We still got you.
Great. And did you see a title slide?
Yeah, we see the title slide saying emergency management.
Fantastic. Thank you. Through the chair, thank you. Thanks for having me today. For the folks that I haven't had an opportunity to meet, my name is Dan Seguin. I'm the Manager of Community Sustainability at the Regional District of Central Kootenay. And in my portfolio, I've got everything to do with disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. And I'm also responsible for the Emergency Operations Center when it's activated. And I'll typically take on the EOC Director role when that is activated. So tonight, I thought the opportunity was to be able to give you kind of a 30,000 foot down into a couple of the details of the emergency management program that the RDCK has and how the Village of Silverton fits into it. So I will jump through the presentation. I don't know how you usually do it, but I'm happy to take questions throughout if somebody kind of flags it for me. Otherwise, I'll jump in at the end.
Sounds good.
So what I'll look at tonight is give you an overview of what emergency management is, kind of like the EM 101. We'll look at EDMA, which is the Emergency and Disaster Management Act, which is the legislation that legislates emergency management in British Columbia. And then I'll have a few slides on that relationship and roles and responsibilities between the Village of Silverton and Regional District. So to kind of kick it off, I wanted to give a quick refresher of what emergency management looks like. And I've tried to capture it into one sentence where emergency management is that organized process of preparing for, mitigating, responding to, and recovering from disasters to protect lives, property, and environment. So the principle when you kind of stand back from it is that for every dollar spent, you're going to get back $7 to $11 of effort in terms of mitigation, so the ratio between a dollar spent in mitigation and preparedness versus the cost of response and recovery. So the reality of disasters is, as long as we live in our natural environment and that we're also building environments, is that we're never going to be able to mitigate them 100%. So we always have to have that preparedness and response piece to be able to respond to events as they happen. And looking at the different trends around our changed and changing climate, we are seeing an increase in frequency, severity of incidents as a result of climate change. Also that piece around critical infrastructure interdependence that we have a lot more of, and shifting demographics in Canada. So what that looks like when you start looking at it in a timeline around those 4 phases of emergency management, you're in that preparatory and mitigative state for as long as you can be until you have this event that happens. One of the interesting things to note here is that when we get an event, it's often the boots on the ground or at the local level that we first know about it and that we first experience it. So that kicks us into that response phase, and then we slowly over time move into that local authority recovery, so either Village of Silverton Regional District, so getting our feet back under us to be able to support community in its recovery and trying to get back to a new normal or how we resume life afterwards. One of the things that's a little bit invisible here that I just want to capture is that recovery, even though we've got this on like a finite timeline, it can take days to weeks to months to years, depending on the extent of the emergency. And I do recognize that there are people in the Silverrton area that are still impacted and recovering from last year's wildfires. So how that kind of breaks down when we have to navigate and manage emergencies in British Columbia is that there are different parts and different structures that get activated depending on the size and scale of the event. And it always starts from the bottom up. So that site response, moving up into local authority. In our case, we also have 2 local authorities that get activated between the Village of Silverrton and the regional district, and then move into provincial and federal groups that can support depending what is needed. Oh, I've lost my cursor. There it is. And all of this, like I was saying before, is governed by EDMA, so the Emergency and Disaster Management Act. And that replaced the Emergency Program Act back in the fall of 2023. And one of the things that's a little bit interesting about it is that the Act is really telling local authorities what they have to be doing in terms of disaster emergency management. But the regulations that tell us the how to apply the Act haven't yet come into force or have been shown to us, or we haven't even had a chance to read them yet. It sounds like they're going to be coming out. My guesstimate is probably they're going to announce them at UBCM this fall, and that we might have an opportunity to see them up front with a non-disclosure agreement, but we have yet to see that. And there were 5 big changes that came out of the EDMA. And it was that we're now responsible for emergency management plans across all phases of emergency management. It used to be we only needed to have plans for response. Excuse me. We also had moved from a risk assessment from top hazards to all foreseeable hazards. We also have been asked to have business continuity plans for all parts of our organization. So that means how do we continue to deliver services to our residents that are paying for those services if we're impacted by disasters. So that's us as local authorities. There's also an optional new structure called a multi-jurisdictional emergency management organization. The coolest thing I've heard them called are MOHITMOs. They sound way more fun. I'm going to call them a MEJMO. So MEJMOs are a structure that we can have between different organizations and different jurisdictions so that we can tackle and address all the issues all the requirements out of EDMA that are being asked of us. And then the final piece is around consultation and collaboration with our Indigenous partners, so with Indigenous governing bodies. So how that ends up breaking down between local authorities is that we've got these risk assessments that help us understand what the hazards are out there. We have to develop these emergency management plans that help us mitigate the impacts of those hazards. Business continuity plans make sure that we can deliver on the plans that we've established, so within our own organizations. And then there also has to be these parts that say, well, who's responsible for what? And who's controlling which part of a disaster. And sometimes that's addressed through a multi-jurisdictional emergency management organization. And within that MEJMO, we can have conversations between local authorities that may choose to delegate powers from one local authority to another. So for example, from Village of Silverrton to Regional District for certain pieces of work that we end up doing on behalf of the village, giving you our part of our emergency management service. So what that looks like, I should have grabbed a glass of water, which I didn't. Sorry, so I'll cough every once in a while. So what that looks like between the Village of Silverrton and the regional district is that we share some of the responsibility. So the way that emergency management is set up at the RDCK is we have all our electoral areas and we have 6 participating municipalities as well. That gives us a budget, or that requires a budget of about $1 million a year that go to taxation. And Silverrton's part of that budget is $6,440 a year, or at least it was for 2025. And if it's something you track around that meal rate, so what the rate is per $1,000 slice of a home's value, if you have a home that is $500,000, that costs about $35.50 a year for the emergency management program that Silverton is part of with the regional district. And that covers, or not covers, a whole bunch of different functions that I'll get to in a minute. And the way that our emergency management structure is to be able to deliver on those functions is we have a manager of community sustainability and then several emergency program coordinators and a disaster mitigation and adaptation senior advisor. And what I wanted to show here is that we've got some core staff that are full-time staff, and then we've got some staff that only get activated during response. So those orange boxes on our organizational chart here are paid for and cost recoverable through the province in order to be able to support an active event. And then we also have the Fire Smart program that is an optional program, and I know Village of Silverton is looking, I think you have a report, so I'm not going to speak to that. I think you have a report tonight that'll speak more about that and how we're going to be in relationship for the Fire Smart program and wildfire mitigation. The detailed breakdown that I wanted to show that it can get a little bit complex on this particular one, but what I wanted to show is that there are really 5 big components to it. So the how we work together, so that governance piece, the risk assessments, the preparedness, response, and recovery. So then those phases of emergency management. So while the regional district holds, while the Village of Silverton is part of the regional district's emergency management program, the municipality also has its own requirements that are outside of the regional district's emergency program. So something like that would be, for example, around business continuity. So how does the Village of Silverton continue to deliver services to its residents if it is impacted by a disaster? Also, the village would be responsible for assessing certain risks within the village itself, but I'm looking at a larger HRVA, so hazard, risk, and vulnerability assessment that the village could be part of. We'll soon be in touch with your CAO to talk about that in the coming weeks. But that would be something that would fit into a larger regional HRVA. The other one is to be able to have some emergency preparedness plans that are village specific. So for example, I think you guys have a water treatment plant, if I'm remembering correctly. Or it's not are you shaking your head yes?
No water treatment plant here. No.
It's not a water treatment plant. That's right. There was something, oh no, that was up in New Denver, of course. So there could be some, depending on the types of hazards that exist, you might have a plan, let's say, do you have a gas station? I'm trying to remember now.
Nope.
No gas station. Well,
no gas station.
Maybe the plans are super limited and you don't have to have big plans since depending on the size of the village. So I'll focus back in onto the response side then, where that would be like we did last year, where the RDCK would be holding, would have the Emergency Operations Center, then liaising back with the village. And then finally in recovery, it's supporting that coordination of recovery within the village's boundaries. So when the EOC is activated, the regional district, in terms of response, what we're looking at is gathering information, making sure that it's valid, and analyzing it so that we can understand what is actually happening on any incident, be able to prioritize what we're going to do about that incident in order to be able to stabilize it, and then figure out where are the resources that we need in order to be able to address anything that's critical, and then stepping into that restoration of critical infrastructure or making sure that people are continuing to be safe. From a emergency management, oh yeah, of course. Well, we took, I was like, oh, I didn't remember that part of the slide, but it is taking that coordinated approach. And I wanted to bring that up because I'll be speaking a little bit in a minute here, but what we can see is that when we step outside of that coordinated approach, it can have an impact either on the responders themselves or on our residents, because they're getting a variety of different information from what we're able to do. So, for example, last year, one of the big differences for the regional district is that it was the first time that we ever had one municipality that was either on full alert or on full evacuation, and last year we had 3. So that was very different, and we have fortunately learned a lot from it, and we've had an after action review that should be going to board probably in July. It'll be ready and finalized to be able to go to the public. And what we've done internally in the interim is taken in some of those lessons learned and learn from them and change procedure and protocol inside the EOC. So one of the key pieces, like I was talking about, is that coordination and consistency across local authorities when we're working together. And what we're trying to look at is that increased trust that increases safety for our residents. So I wanted to talk about how between the mayor, who in this case the mayor and Leah would sit, Director Main, would sit on the RDCK board. They might be participating in what's called a policy group, which advises the EOC. So sometimes the EOC will have some policy specific questions for areas that are impacted. We may pull a policy group together to help us get strategic direction and get information from elected officials on policy or direction questions that we might have. We also will be reaching out to your elected official for signing any state of local emergency, which gives those extra powers during an emergency. For example, asking people to leave their homes and then requiring them to stay out of their homes at that point. And also, it's important to remember that elected officials or the mayor or the RDCK board representative don't participate in the operational side of things, but they are from a policy and a strategy standpoint. And when they speak, we try to speak in a coordinated way, like I was saying, and bringing that consistency for maximizing trust. I also wanted to bring up what other council members can be doing, because this is a question that sometimes comes up from municipal councils. And some of the key things that we bring forward is making sure that if you're sharing information, to only share what's been verified as information that is true and accurate. So often we point to the RDCK website, where we're doing that verification of information at the onset as well. BC Wildfire Services website or other response agency websites are also key. So as an elected official, you might say you can get that. If you don't know the information yourself, you can point residents to those different sites that do have that verified information. So at the same time, there's an opportunity to be that advocate for preparedness and helping people be prepared for any information that would be coming out. So for example, one of those things might be ensuring that your residents are signed up for Voyant Alerts, which is the system that's used by the EOC to notify either digitally, by text, or by telephone any residents that there might be a threat from that would be requiring an evacuation alert or an evacuation order. So finally, it's really about amplifying that message coming out of the EOC or other trusted response agencies. And this is my last slide, and it was just to give you a bit of a snapshot of what the EOC looks like. So what actually response looks like from both the field standpoint and the emergency operation center standpoint. So we've got staff, that's our responsibility, making sure that the place is staffed, that it's response ready, that we've got all the tech ready to go, that we've got backup systems if power goes out, which it did last year, if internet goes out. We'd be supporting the declaration of the state of local emergency, as well as issuing evacuation orders, alerts, or rescinds, and that notification piece that I was talking about around Voyant Alert. And we do our best to also liaise and maintain relationship with throughout the entire event around communication and operational decisions that we're making with different local authorities and First Nations and response agencies. we'll be the coordinators of that public information. And then we've got that financial component to make sure that every single dollar we spend or every single dollar that a municipality spends will be cost recoverable. And finally, from field ops or a field operations standpoint, is that site management and making sure that there's a coordination of resources to address the goal for that operational period, and then managing that temporary access for areas that are under evacuation. Finally, emergency support services. And that is what I have for you today. So I'd be happy to take some questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Councillor Mills, go ahead.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for that presentation. My question is, are there any big differences from last year's fires to if we were to get another emergency like that this year in emergency management? That'd be the same.
Can you, any differences like what specifically?
Like the way the EOC operated last year during the fires. If we were unfortunate enough to have the same incident, is there any changes in the way of operation?
We have done a lot of different tweaks to EOC. Like we're working on a modernization process so that we've got better documentation internally. We're working on better staffing processes so that we've got, like we were there about 6 weeks. I was pulling 10 to 18 days and it was too much. So we've shifted that a little bit. We've brought in new digital processes for financial tracking. The other thing that I think will be more felt from let's say it was again in Silverton, would be a liaison officer. So we've identified that there's I was as EOC director needing to liaise with the different local authorities, and it became tasks that should have had somebody specifically attached to that. So that's one of the big changes. One of the other changes is shifting around how we do ESS, emergency support services. Yep. So it used to be that we had ESS people that were attached to specific municipalities. We're evolving to a more of a zone model so that ESS volunteers can move from one zone to the other and not necessarily identify as much with a single municipality. There's other tweaks. I could probably get you a list.
No, that sounds good.
Great.
I know one of the concerns was communication. Myself, the way I did, as you mentioned in your presentation, is I amplified the EOC information by sharing it on Facebook, Twitter, through friends and family. But communication is always good to get out first.
Yeah.
Accurate communication.
And if I may, Chair, not that this is an excuse, but last year was it was striking how quickly things kept escalating.
Yeah. And
they just didn't stop for 2 weeks. And we ended up being on our back foot. And one of the challenges that I saw in our partner agencies through BC Wildfire is that they had an incident management team from Australia that was assigned to the Slocan complex. And that caused, in all transparency, challenges. Challenges on just getting things set up, getting the lay of the land, and integrating into what was already established in the regional district was challenging. And we've had, last year and the year before, we had well, that's not true. We had a couple pre-season conversations with BC Wildfire, and I've had 5 so far, where we're able to sit down and go, okay, well, really, we know that these things didn't go so well, so what's that going to look like this year? And that's where that liaison piece came back out. And that liaison is going to be someone who is not only liaising with the different local authorities, but also with response agencies. So we're going to be in the briefing room in the morning and getting the information firsthand from the incident commander that we can then take back to the EOC and also distribute to our local municipal partners that are part of the program.
Yeah, good news. Thanks.
We'll try it. Yeah, try to learn. Iterate.
Yeah.
Yep, that sounds great to me too. I like the idea of more communication. Any other comments from council? Okay. Yeah.
Thanks. I also echo that increased communication is key. And you and I, Dan, have had a number of conversations about what it was like on the ground in Silverton, New Denver, and I think that this presentation shows that there have been good lessons learned from last year. And I'm sure that our next emergency will be totally different.
And not for a while. Great. Okay, no further questions? Okay, thank you very much, Dan, for your presentation. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you're welcome to leave too.
Thank you so much. I'm going to have my dinner if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
Have a great evening. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Okay, on to new business. We have the 2025 Canada Day celebrations. The community club does this every year. We do have a staff report with a few options. Do we have anybody from council that wants to move a motion, or do you want to do a bit of discussion? Do you want to just move a motion? Okay, move what motion are you moving? Okay, approve the request for the Canada Day events to proceed as past years, and the staff will continue to work with Silverrton Community Club to support the successful celebration. Okay, seconded by Councillor Main. Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor? Carried. That was easy.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. And they're always looking for volunteers if you want to volunteer some time that day. Okay, on to the next one. We have a request for a temporary road closure for National Indigenous Peoples Day. We did have a little bit more information come out today on this. Everybody should have got an email on it. We do have a staff report with some options. I think we should have a little bit of discussion first, and then we can move into the options, if that's okay with council. And I can start the discussion off if that would be good. Okay, I love this idea, and I think it's a great thing to have in Silverrton. I would like to see the organizers a little bit better plan to do something like this in the future. It seems a little bit rushed, in all honesty. I honestly do not like the idea of having it right on the highway. That's a huge safety issue with me. We do have some beautiful green spaces and parks that I think this would be perfect for. And, yeah, I think we need to keep it off the highway, especially if they're planning on now having a teepee and a few other things. Our gallery area is not the best suited area to put up a teepee. We have the day park, or we have Deers Park for that. So my recommendation would be absolutely let them go ahead with this and let them work with staff on this, make sure they have the proper insurances to do this, but not to close the road. Have them do this down at the day park or in Deers Park. Keep this off the highway. Any further questions, comments? Sorry.
Yeah, I agree, because with traffic, when you have people going through town, you got all the traffic parked or cars parked along the sides, and then people see something such as a teepee, all of a sudden you got vehicles slowing down, wondering what's going on, and yeah, it makes a big hazard. If we can keep it in, like you say, the slip park would be the perfect, because it's easy to get to. The parking, well, no matter what, we don't have parking that's great for this kind of thing. So, yeah, let's keep it where it's not so visible from the highway itself. That's the unfortunate thing. We have the highway running right through, so it limits our options. But I agree that day park, slip park, whichever would be good.
Councillor Main, go ahead. I see him, Captain Mills. You're next.
Thank you, Chair. I know that the organizers were, one of the reasons they suggested initially having it adjacent to the Silverrton General Store right on the highway was for visibility. I do agree with the concerns raised at this table that it's not a good idea to have such an event on the highway. I think that the day park would be the best venue for it, and I would be willing to work specifically on signage for this event. because I think it's important that people know where it is and be able to see where it is and have very clear direction to go to the actual place of the event and the ceremonies. A question I have is, is there power available at the day park? Because some of the vendors may need power.
There isn't power down there, but I know with the community club, they have asked the residents that live there, and more often than not, they're willing to help them out.
Okay. Yeah, I have no objections to this event at all. In fact, I'm partly involved with the planning of it, but I've been away so much, so I've been able to do a lot. But I would work specifically on signage with them as a contribution and an enhancement to it, and I want to see the event go on.
Okay, Councillor Mills and then Councillor Denbach.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, I'm against it. Here's my reasons. I'm against having it closing the road on the highway, and in light of the correspondence from the Okanagan Nation Alliance, I feel I will not invite any chance of confrontation in Silverton or the opportunity of confrontations between bands in the U.S. or the States. I vote against it.
Okay, Councillor Denbach, go ahead.
I have two things. I completely agree with not having it on the highway, if you want to call it that, for a couple of reasons. One, well, first of all, if you're inviting company over to your house, you're not going to have them move your cars and have them sitting in the driveway. You're going to gussy up your backyard and put out some lights and whatever, and that's the slip day park here. I love the idea of showing off the slip day park to guests and visitors and so on. The only problem I have with the argument of not having it on the highway is what happens when the general store wants to do their retail stuff again in that space, because we've supported that. And I do like the idea of supporting them, having their, whatever those events are in that area sometimes, but that's somehow different than, we have to be able to distinguish between those two kinds of events.
I agree with you there. I think eventually we will need to do an events bylaw permit kind of thing, and then we can hammer out all those details, whether it be for an event or just to close the road down for a business event.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Broughton, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree, because the other problem we're likely to encounter is we're going to have a lot of parking in and around town, so right in on people's boulevards, which is all legal. Some of them still don't like the idea, but so we're going to have to remind people, if they got complaints, let us know after what was good and what's bad, but we're going to have to remind people they can't block off their boulevards. There is some in the summer that figure if they put out cones right near the edge of the road, people won't park there to go to the beach. We can't allow people to be doing that. Boulevards are free for parking. Most times it's never a problem, but something like this, I think we're going to get quite a few responses possibly. So, like Tay said, we do need to come up with an events planning thing. And I think as far as with the road there by the store, part of this would be, I think we're going to get a lot more people to that than they do to their sale thing. I'm just guessing, but so you would have a lot more people clogging up the highway area and stuff. So, but that again would have to be kind of thing. We'd have to set limits maybe if we come up with an event, protocol, whatever. Yeah, policy. So, that's my opinion.
Okay, Councillor Denbach.
Brian, is there potential here for any kind of conflict? I mean, should the RCMP be aware of this, just sort of standing by, or is that not really a concern?
I'm taking that letter pretty serious.
Yeah.
You read it.
Councillor Main, go ahead. Oh.
I know that the organizers of the event have already had a conversation with the RCMP, and will continue to work with them as we get closer to the time for the event. Keep in mind that this is a nationally declared commemoration day for recognition of the Indigenous peoples on whose lands all of Canada sits. So it is kind of a big deal.
Great. Okay, so we have a few different motions. I'm going to suggest that council authorize the use of the day park or Duis Park for the National Indigenous Peoples Day event on June 21st, 2025, subject to proof of insurance and working with Public Works and staff. That way we've covered all of our bases. Can I get somebody to second that? Councillor Main, any discussion? No discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we're on to H3, RDCK Partnership Community Wildfire Protection Plan. So as council realizes, we have worked with RDCK and CIFCO in the past. This is not cutting us out of working with CIFCO. We're trying to make a partnership working for both of them just to try to fill in the gaps that we do have in the village here. Would somebody like to move a motion? Councillor Main, go ahead.
I will move the recommendation to partner with RDCK to develop a community wildfire resiliency plan for the municipality and surrounding portion of Area H.
Okay, do I have a second? Councillor Denbach, any discussion? Councillor Main, go ahead.
Yeah, I assume that we will have conversation with Area H Director Walter Popoff, and that this does not preclude us developing a relationship with CIFCO.
I'll let Councillor CAO answer.
That is correct. I'm talking with both Regional District and CIFCO and Southeast Fire Center and UBCM and all of the various players that might be able to help us get some fire smart programming in Silverton as quickly as possible.
Any further discussion? No further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have some correspondence for information. Would anybody like to pull any of that to discuss?
Yeah.
We'll show you how to use that split screen. Correspondence for information, yeah.
Yeah, that one. That one. The first.
So I would like to pull the BC Hydro UBCM meetings to discuss. And I'd also like to discuss the seasonal readiness outreach letter for the heat and wildfire smoke.
Nope. Let's see. RDCK partnership, community wildfire protection.
That's, yeah, you're not on the agenda.
Yeah.
Updates to the agenda.
Yeah. I'm just in the agenda itself.
Okay, so can you? So BC Hydro UBCM meetings, I think that's something that we need to be planning for. We have enough issues with our BC Hydro around here that we need to talk to somebody and get some things sorted out. We have far too many power surges that come through here and it's wrecking our infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So if I may,
Go ahead.
You're going to UBCM?
I am,
okay.
yeah.
And I will be going, sponsored by RDCK, and I think it would be a good idea for both of us to go into the discussion with BC Hydro. They have had delegations from this area before, yes. And it's always really good to talk with them, and they generally take the position that if we give them that feedback, they go, okay, that is the feedback we're getting. They don't kind of immediately push back. So.
Okay, good. Is there anything we need to do for that, or?
No, there's no resolution required. Staff can just make those meetings, make the bookings.
Okay.
Yeah, if we could pull the ONA 2025 May Village of Silverton draft briefing package for local governments. There is legislation in BC that requires us to consult with specific named Indigenous governments, First Nations governments, when we do when we initiate activities outside of our boundaries, such as our water system, our reservoirs, the Silverton Creek. So there's nothing that we have to do right now, but please, everyone, be aware of this. It's a good piece to read. And there will come a time when we have to engage actively to develop a coordinated project or get permission to do something. We're involved through the regional district on a Spokane Lake and Rivers partnership, and we will have to do consulting with the ONA for activities on the shoreline of both the lake and the river. So it's just good to be informed about this.
Good. And then the last thing to pull was the seasonal heat and wildfire smoke. I think this is a great thing. We had the hall open a couple times last year before we got kicked out for the wildfires. I am aware that there is some funding for this. Is there anything that council would have to do for you to try to get that funded?
I think that it would be helpful. I can try and prepare this for the July meeting. If we had a policy that clarified how staff were going to be paid in case of an emergency, it makes it much easier to submit claims for reimbursement if there is clear policy direction to back those claims up.
It's good. Okay. Any further comments on that? No? Seeing none? Okay, we'll go to council reports. Councillor Main came back, so my life got quiet again. So I have nothing to report. I still sit in on the RDCK meetings just to listen, but I just do that as a personal thing.
I really appreciate you taking on, attending some of those meetings during my crazy ass absence. And, you know, of course, I got back from being on the campaign trail and took off for Ottawa for the FCM conference. And I am so jet lagged, I can't even describe it. The travel, it took 2 days to get home because of the, you know, well, I can get here from there, but then I have to wait for a connection, and it just is crazy. However, I'm back. I will try to give a little bit of updates on some of the things that I was able to attend. I attended the West Kootenay Transit Committee meeting. There is going to be a transit fare review for the whole West Kootenay, and there will be, they describe it as a lot of community engagement for that. We're waiting to hear when and what. We did pass a motion directing the chair of the committee to go to IHA and ask for increased health connections funding. Our bus, actually, that runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays, is not 100% funded through BC Transit. It is funded mostly through IHA as a health connections bus. But it does, you know, it runs regularly anyway. So we're looking for increased support for that. May 14th, the Joint Resource Recovery Committee meeting was mostly taken up with discussion around the ostrich situation. There was a lot of discussion. There was a desire to potentially obtain legal opinion on what we can do, what we can't do. This went to the Regional District Board on the 15th, and that meeting also was taken up in large part with the ostrich situation, and there were a lot of people who attended that meeting. Pretty much everyone was very respectful and well behaved, and they made their case. And what Regional District eventually came up with was, because we had been asked to accept the carcasses at Udashania landfill, which is a Regional District landfill, it is within our jurisdiction to set parameters around that. And the motion we passed was to decline to accept the carcasses unless each bird had been tested, and we knew that what we were accepting either was contaminated waste, which would have to be handled very carefully, or it was not contaminated with the H5N1 avian virus. And in that case, we could handle it just as a normal carcass, with a lot of consideration around the lack of testing and the lack of transparency, the lack of communication around this. It is an ongoing situation. So RDCK passed that motion. We stayed entirely within our jurisdiction, but it did lend support to the people who are trying to get a different outcome for the birds. Our MP, Scott Anderson, also got involved and is seeing it as an active file. I'm really happy to see that he's involved with it, that he is doing a lot of communication with a lot of people and a lot of agencies. So as I said, it's an ongoing situation. We'll see what it leads to. Community Sustainable Living Advisory Committee did some budget review, and during my absence there was a meeting, and there is a consultation being done between all of the directors that sit on that committee and Sangay Sudan, who is the department manager that it falls under. She is doing individual interviews and will provide a report that will help us decide in what form the advisory committee might continue its work, or whether it will dissolve as a committee and have all of those activities come directly through the board. There's a lot of pros and cons on all of it, and we'll see what happens. A number of participants have indicated their desire to not continue participating. So it does become kind of critical when the support dissolves. We'll see what happens. And then I went to the FCM convention in Ottawa. We had keynote speeches from the leaders or deputy leaders from all the parties. And so that was really good. And I have to say that it was the first time that the Conservative Party actually sent a representative to engage with FCM. There have been years that the Conservative Party did not acknowledge the conference at all, and other years where they would send a video from the leader, whoever it happened to be at that time. But we had the deputy leader. She came, she gave had her say. She engaged with people, and it was really gratifying to me to see that engagement. It was so exciting to be in Ottawa on the second day of a new government. And I'll tell you, they all looked like deer in the headlights, every single one of them. The Prime Minister did come and give a keynote speech and did a fireside chat after his keynote speech. And our President, Rebecca Bly, councillor in Vancouver, definitely put his feet to the fire on what we are pushing for and have been for the last number of years and will continue, is a new funding model for municipal governments and a new recognition that local government is an order of government and needs to be properly funded. We are where the rubber hits the road. We are the ones who actually build this country. So when the party leaders are talking about we need country building undertakings and projects, slow down a minute. The country gets built in every single community that does the infrastructure, and it's not just the roads, bridges, sewers, and water. It's the recreation centers, it's the cultural activities, it's all of those things. It's the collaboration between communities and the collaboration between communities, local governments, provincial territorial governments, federal governments, and Indigenous governments. And unless and until we can treat each other all as equals, we're just going to be in the same position, speaking as a local government person, of having to go hat in hand and beg for money that we should be getting because we are being depended upon to keep the country functional. So that was, it was really interesting to see this brand new Prime Minister having to respond to those things. And I think we'll see some ongoing engagement. I'm very hopeful of that. I will give a more intellectual report on the conference once I get through the jet lag. So thank you to all of council for supporting me in the campaign that I undertook and in my participation in RDCK and Federation of Canadian Municipalities.
Great, thank you. Councillor Broughton, do you have anything to report?
No, it's been pleasantly quiet.
Good. Okay, Councillor Denbach, anything to report?
Nothing to report.
Councillor Mills, anything to report?
No, nothing to report other than to say that the meeting that most of council had with MP Scott Anderson in the fire hall, I thought was great, because we were able to tell him our concerns running a small community and infrastructure issues. So I thought that was nice of him to stop by.
Good.
And thanks, Leah, for all you do. Hard worker.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, on to administration department reports. We have a report from our public works. I just wanted to commend you from how much work you've got done. I've had a lot of comments from residents saying how nice it is to be in Silverton and how friendly it is to have two public works out there that are happy, and it's good to see. It's great PR for the village, and we really need it at this time. And I want to thank you guys for all your hard work. Any further council questions?
Yeah, I haven't seen this.
Okay, just one second. I will find it. No, you're on the wrong date.
Yeah. So we got sent two sets of agendas or something like that. One was with the original one, and the other one was an update in documents or something.
We just got one. Silverrton report. So
I've been following along with most of this on the computer, and then I hit places where there's gaps in.
Okay, this is today, so. And if you go down there, you have this. Okay, sorry. Okay. Any further comments to Public Works report? Any questions? Councillor Main, go ahead.
The town looks great. and it feels good. I mean, you could, the feeling in town is stable and comfortable and pleasant. And since you've come on board and working with Tim, boy, it looks great. It feels great. Lots is getting done. It's obvious. It pays off. Thank you.
I'll just jump in and say well done. Much appreciated.
I'll throw mine in because, yeah, agree with everything that's been said.
Great. Okay, on to the Q1 financial reports. It's just a summary to tell us where we're at. Do we need to accept that or anything, or just for information? Any questions from council? No questions from council? Okay. And then we're on to public input period. Does any public have any questions for council? No? I don't think we got anybody online. Anybody online that have any questions or comments for council? Seeing none, I will have somebody move the recommendation that council move to an in-camera meeting pursuant to section 90.1. Councillor Broughton, seconded by Councillor Main. All in favor? Carried.
I got online just at the very end, but thank you all. You're doing a remarkable job, everybody.
Thank you, Michael.